The Israeli military says it has killed, quote, numerous Palestinian militants in fierce fighting in the southern Gaza city of Khan Younis. The unabated hostilities came a day after the International Court of Justice in The Hague ordered Israel to do everything in its power to prevent genocide in the Gaza Strip. Now, according to the World Health Organization, hospitals there are running out of fuel, food and supplies. Israel says it's fighting to destroy Hamas, which several states consider a terrorist organization.
A hospital on the brink of collapse, overcrowded with injured patients. The situation in Khan Younis is growing increasingly desperate. The trauma ward is packed. Wounded people here are being treated on a floor splashed with blood.
Most injured people coming to the hospital are from schools and residential areas. We're not trying to treat them anymore. We're just trying to keep them alive.
Israeli forces have advanced deeper into Khan Younis in recent days. Gazan health officials say dozens of people have been killed in the fighting, which has come very close to the hospital.
There's no milk formula, no doctors to treat the patients, no food or medication for children.
Many here had hoped for things to take a different turn on Friday when the United Nations top court ruled on a case against Israel's offensive in Gaza. A majority of the judges called on Israel to protect civilians and allow the entry of desperately needed humanitarian aid into the Strip.
The court is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering.
But the judges stopped short of ordering the urgent request of South Africa, which had brought the case against Israel, an immediate ceasefire. A ruling on South Africa's allegation that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza will likely take years. Palestinians broadly welcomed Friday's ruling, but it offered no respite for the people of Gaza.
Jonathan Crickx is Chief of Communication and Advocacy for UNICEF in the Palestinian territories. He joins us from Rafah in southern Gaza. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Crickx. We know that more than half of Gaza's population is in Rafah right now. What are the conditions you're seeing there?
Well, the conditions are absolutely devastating. So wherever you look, you see thousands and thousands of makeshift tents and with many, many children living in them. They don't have access to enough water. They don't have food. People are getting very hungry and desperate. They don't have even hygiene and sanitation. There is sometimes only one toilet for 500 or 700 people sometimes. And so this is for us a very big concern because the mix between the lack of water and the poor sanitary conditions are really a terrible recipe for the spread of illnesses like chronic diarrhea, for example. So the situation here is very dramatic, and what I have seen and what I have heard in terms of stories is stories of sorrow and loss.
We can see even now you're speaking to us from a darkened room. I imagine that is an impact of the electricity supplies being cut as well. Now, we know that the ICJ has urged organizations like yours to be allowed humanitarian access to Gaza. Do you expect this to help with your work?
Well, it is absolutely needed that the humanitarian aid is reaching the children and the most vulnerable people wherever they are. But we are facing issues. Our aid is coming in, and I attended several food distribution. We went to a small community where we also distributed winter clothes and cover because as I speak to you, it's 10 degrees out. And the children that I have met, they have literally nothing to keep them warm. So it is absolutely crucial to have that aid being delivered, but many challenges are, on our way. One is the security. With the intensity of the bombing, it's extremely difficult to reach the north of the Gaza Strip, for example, We have issues when it comes to communication, limited cell network. We cannot coordinate easily with our partners. And then there is not enough trucks and fuel to run those trucks to reach the people in need. So the aid is being delivered, but we have to understand that when we have 1.3 million people here in Rafah, in such a small stretch of land, they cannot live on humanitarian aid alone. And what is needed is more commercial trucks, for example, to come in with fruit and vegetables, because the prices of food has skyrocketed 4 or 5 times the prices pre-crisis, before this war. So if that doesn't happen, we are very, very worried that severe cases of malnutrition will take place and children might starve.
Jonathan Crickx with the UNICEF talking to us from Rafah in southern Gaza. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Now, states including the US, UK and Canada have halted funding for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. That's after it emerged that some of the agency's staffers were involved in the October 7th terror attacks by Hamas on Israel. That's an allegation by Israel. Now, the agency UNRWA said it had fired the workers under suspicion and that an investigation was underway. The US was the relief organization's biggest financial backer. The agency has previously said its ability to deliver aid to Gaza is on the verge of collapse.
More. I'm joined now by Shaina. She's a communications advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council and joins us from Jerusalem now. Shaina, good to see you again. What impact do you believe this ruling will have on the work of humanitarian organizations such as your own?
Well, part of the ruling called for Israel to enable the provision of assistance needed to meet the basic needs for survival of the Palestinian population under its control. We are hopeful that Israel and countries putting pressure on Israel will allow for the provision of additional aid to enter to enter Gaza, because at this point, the amount of aid that is entering is wholly insufficient to meet the tremendous needs that we've seen over the last 16 weeks of hostilities. The situation continues to grow more desperate and dire by the day. Palestinians north of Rafah and Khan Younis, in the middle area in Gaza City and in northern Gaza, are struggling to find basic necessities. People are resorting to eating animal fodder in order to stay alive in some of these places. In addition to this, we still need to continue pushing for a permanent, sustained ceasefire. This is the only way to put an end to the devastation, the killing, the destruction in Gaza, and to allow the 2.3 million Palestinian civilians living there the chance to rebuild their lives and start to recover.
I want to bring up something else, because several countries have suspended their donations to the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees amid allegations that UNRWA employees were involved in the October 7th terror attack. Now, UNRWA is Gaza's largest aid agency. How is this scandal and its fallout, which we're just now beginning to see, likely to affect Gazans who depend on aid to survive?
My understanding is that as soon as UNRWA heard of the allegations against its employees, it immediately fired those employees. That's been reported in the press. The situation in Gaza is so dire. Palestinians need access to aid, however it can come. UNRWA, as of now, has been providing about 80% of the aid and assistance to Palestinians. The vast majority of those internally displaced are seeking shelter at UNRWA facilities. To cut off aid means to cut off funding to UNRWA would mean to prevent aid from reaching those people so desperately in need.
Shaina Lowe, communications advisor for the humanitarian organization Norwegian Refugee Council. Always great to get your view of things. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And we can get some analysis now from Sharon. While she's a professor of international law at the American University of Paris, where she directs the Justice Lab. Good to have you on DW. Now, opinions are divided on this ruling. What do you make of the ICJ's orders?
Yes, so first of all, I think it's a very important case because it's the first time that Israel is on trial on an international forum. And the International Court of Justice is a very respected court. So, of course, it's not Amnesty International, it's not an NGO. It's a very serious, very conservative court. So when the court is saying something, it means that it's not a political statement. It is a legal statement. And I think what the court is saying here is very strong. So it's true, it did not order to stop the military operation, but this was not expected that he will say this. What the court is saying is that it is possible that we have a commission of genocide. He is not deciding on this, but he is requesting from Israel to prevent any act that could amount to breaching its obligation with the Geneva Convention, and it is request to allow humanitarian assistance as well any prevention of this kind of act. And I wanted just to add about this that the value is huge because we have the US judge, the German judge, all the judges were in the opinion of this. And even the ad hoc Israeli judge, Judge Barak, was supporting two of these provisional measures. So I think it is a very strong judicial decision.
Let's talk about the ICJ's kind of power in this, because the court says it trusts Israel will comply with the orders, but it lacks the power to actually enforce them, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay, so, about power is always the question, what do we expect from a court to do, right? Especially when we think about the international legal orders. So, of course, the court is not the police, it's not a political actor, it is a court. And we know well that in the international legal order, international law and politics are very much interconnected. But this means now that political forces could put pressure on Israel. And we already have seen the European Union declaring immediately after that Israel has to comply with this. And even within Israel, the voices are taking very seriously this, because Israel is committed to the Genocide Convention because of its own historical background, right? They were victim to the Genocide Convention. So of course, now it is up the politics, but we have a legal decision saying what it says, which is very strong.
That was Sharon, Professor of International Law. Thank you so much for your analysis.